welcome you all. So many of us are Plantation Constant Readers. That's our name, officially. Somebody's ringing already, Pam.
Not me.
Please silence your phones and keep your hands and feet inside the windows at all times.
Sorry.
So we are the Constant Readers. I tried to get Jeanette to name us the Continent Readers, as in we read books from around the continent.
Oh.
But she didn't get the humor.
It's not funny.
I fully understand. We like to make fun of ourselves because we're mostly old here, and we're a very casual group. For those of you who don't know us, and I can probably name who you are, it's totally okay to get up if you're not interrupting anybody and get another glass of wine. Help yourself to more food as long as we don't interrupt the conversation. This has always been a very conversational group. We'll pick a book, and usually all I have to say, or Ann has to say, is, so I'm hearing that you really liked it. Why?
Yeah.
And then there we go for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it's a very conversational group, so we tried to keep it a little conversational for tonight in case you're wondering why. Generally, we need no leading, and that's always quite fun, although I hope in the end we can lead you to take a picture with us.
Of course.
Of course. So I would like to welcome you to Plantation on the Lake Continent Readers. Most of us at least. And I would like to introduce Pam. She is the reason why our special guest is here tonight. And so Pam is going to introduce her brother.
Okay.
Wow.
Get that paper out.
You wrote a speech?
I want to thank the people that made it possible for him to be here. And that's Ann and Bonnie and Ken. Where's Ken?
He couldn't come tonight. He was sick.
Aw.
And Holly.
She's here.
There she is. Holly and Jennifer and Kay.
What about me?
And Sandy.
Oh, and Sandy.
Oh, I skipped right out over you. I'm sorry.
Good one to skip. She won't let you.
No one.
Yeah, I just said that.
She sent some things on our Facebook page that make us all have to tell her how wonderful she is.
Yeah, she's
I
wonderful.
do not. I didn't do. Who did that?
Where's the audience?
Thank you. It's just so heartwarming to think that you wanted to have him here. And
Of course.
the fact that he was able to come,
We appreciate it.
I just love him so much. And okay,
Okay, Cynthia. Too deep breaths.
enough. Okay,
No crying.
So-
No crying.
No crying in baseball.
ta-da-ta.
No.
Amen.
So I've known Paul all of his life.
That's right.
I'm his older sister. He was born in 1945 in Glendale, California. And our father was an elephant trainer for the Cole Brothers Circus in the
No.
1930s. We're not a show business family, but we really were involved in Midwest roots. My mother, our mother, she thought that Paul and I had the looks and the talent to be something in Hollywood. So, I don't want to say forced, but we took lessons from the time we were little teeny weeny kids. He was 5 and I was 7. I was 7.
This is not the movie theater. 7.
7. Okay.
I used
I've
to have to
always
sneak
said-
her in because
yeah, I've always
she couldn't
said
figure
that-
that out.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, he stuck me in.
Now, Pam, you're not 14 years old. You were born 1 year after.
I'm
She's
a
the
terrible
world's worst
liar.
liar,
I'm a
the
terrible
worst.
liar.
And I'm among the best.
So, Paul had the looks and the talent, and we took singing, dancing, and piano lessons for 4 years, and we appeared in many shows and many recitals. We were constantly traveling, and thank you, Mom, because she would stop her work. She's a full-time mom, and so on. All right, so we both auditioned. for the Mouseketeers. All right, he sang "I Got Plenty and Nothing." And he was hired as an original Mouseketeer. That was in 1955.
That's right.
Wow.
Well, he has a temperament of Rocky Marciano. And believe me, I know this because I'm his sister. So what happened was he punched the casting director and he got fired.
I am the world's first ex-Mouseketeer.
He's the first ex-Mouseketeer.
That's a fact.
So how long were you?
A Mouseketeer.
7 weeks.
Oh.
I was there long enough to practice and then perform at the opening day at Disneyland.
Right.
At the Mickey Mouse Theater. And make lifetime friends
Yes.
and a couple of lifetime enemies.
And write a book.
Well,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
We'll get to that.
Yes. Okay, so after that, he went on to do other television shows and many, many shows, Playhouse 90 and so on. And he made 4 films, including the oldest son of Cary Grant in Houseboat
Oh
with
my God.
Sophia Loren.
See?
We both auditioned for the Donna Reed show. And again, Paul got the
I
part.
got the job.
She's not fair.
Pam.
So he played the impish Jeff Stone on the Donna Reed show for 8 years, from 1958 to 1966. And that's not far from his character. He's still very impish.
And he didn't punch anybody at that.
No, he
No,
didn't.
I learned my lesson.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah.
Well, in one of the episodes, he sang the song, My Dad. You may
I
remember.
do remember that song.
My dad now is played every Father's Day. And that's his song.
Wow.
It still brings tears to my eyes to think this is my brother singing this song. He also sang She Can't Find Her Keys and
remember
many
that.
others.
Yeah.
A funny little novelty song.
Yeah, it was
And,
cute.
and any man who's been married knows what I'm singing about. Because she pulls endless things out of her bag, but she can't find her keys.
So he was hired by Colpix Recording Studio and also Motown.
Motown.
Yep. Ta-da, presto, Tindril.
It's been interesting.
All right. Then, okay, turn the page. He's a natural. Well, I am too.
This is why I do my own introductions.
I'm
I
sorry,
swear.
that was my bad.
No. It's very funny. Right?
No, kidding.
This guy became a major teenage heartthrob. He was up there in magazines and on television and doing his thing.
Sure.
In parades, people would go, I know him, and I love him to death. All right, so it's still very surreal to watch him. He still appears in television and he is also on radio. I'll get to that a little bit later. One of his passions has always been cars, race cars especially. He owned a lot of them. And one that he owned was a 427 Cobra.
Oh my God.
And he raced it, and he was the founder of the Cobra Owner Club.
Along with my sister, Pam, she raced the Cobra too. In the what were then called powder puff races.
Oh yeah.
And he wrote a book called High Performance Driving. It's great. It's a great book. All right. So in 1970, Paul's career kind of slowed down,
I'll say.
and he couldn't find work, and he moved to Connecticut. Now, this guy is a wordsmith. He is so gifted. He used to read books under the covers, like all of us probably did as avid readers. He has got the vocabulary of, I don't know, I have to look up every time he says something. I go, what's in this dictionary? So I'm very proud of what he's done. And he's written 16 books. 16 books. And an adventure series, very much like a James Bond series. and the high performance driving, and Walt, Mickey, and me that we will be talking about tonight. Okay, so
I haven't worn you out yet.
Not yet.
You haven't even gotten to the good stuff.
no.
Come on now, take a time.
All right. He's been to the heights of popularity as an actor and a singer, and to the depths of despair, not being able to find work. He felt strongly enough about the difficulties of child stardom that in 1990, he founded an organization called A Minor Consideration. They counsel and help youthful actors build both in their heyday and after their fame has waned. He was on the board of Screen Actors Guild
Yep,
and has appeared before Congress
yep.
and several state legislatures advocating for stronger child labor laws.
Good.
You're here.
Yay.
Bravo.
Yeah.
His organization forced SAG to take a more proactive stance in issues dealing with child entertainers. He continues to be an advocate, and in 1916,
Whoa!
way back. I'm sorry. I'm so proud of you.
I'll edit
Oh,
this.
come on now, sis.
Please. In 2016, the Actors Fund presented him with the Shirley Temple Award for his contribution to the industry.
Wow.
Oh,
Well deserved.
I'm so proud of him for his love of his family and his friends, his accomplishments, and his dedication to others, and you can tell that I'm now splotching all over him. And
Goodness
I
sakes.
present my brother, who I adore, Paul Petersen.
That's a pretty good introduction.
I know, I think you've been
Arm
memorialized.
week. Don't read my eulogy, though. I'm gonna write it for you.
Oh, you'll write it for
I'll
me.
write it for you.
Somebody else can read it.
Look, it's been an amazing journey. I'm not kidding. All of us have had interesting lives. Mine has been a little more public than most people. And you learn so many things along the way. And the experience, for all the preamble that we had as kids, Pam was much better at practicing her lessons than I was a handful. I mean, it was practice with a switch. It was not fun for me, but I could sing and dance. And our mother said to Montel Williams, when he learned a bit about how it was in our family, she was very simple. She said, Montel, what was I supposed to do with him? He could sing, he could dance. He wasn't number one in school, he was always number two in everything. And that was a curse, to be good at too many things. It's hard to focus. And one day, in 1958, interviews we went on together, there was this new family show called The Donna Reed Show. And while Pam didn't get the older sister's job, Shelley Fabre did. And we had practiced our brother and sister act the previous year doing a pilot for Sherry Lewis. Remember Sherry Lewis?
Oh,
So Shelley and I had it down. And as I'm sure you're all aware, she's got some fabulous comedic chops. She is a princess, another sister of mine. And the pilot sold, and there I was working with Donna Reed, whom our grandfather accosted on the first day of shooting. We're all from Iowa. And the county we're from is the adjacent county where Donna Reed is from, Crawford County. And he walked up to her, and in front of me, he looked her right in the eye and said, Donna Bell Mullinger, I know your dad.
Oh.
Her real name, Donna Bell Mullinger. I was mortified. Oh, this will never work. She was so charming and still had that much Iowa in her. Well, Burr, how are you? My dad talked about you. Anyway, that one decision, or that job, unbeknownst to me, was going to last 8 years.
Yeah.
All the years between 12 and 20.
How old were you?
I was
12?
12.
12 years old.
And if you want to have a fundamental shift in your life, get a starring part on a television show. Because everything changed. Nothing was ever the same, including my relationships with my sister, my mom, our baby sister. And my father captured this in later years. He said, "Paul, I was so proud to introduce you as my son, but I hated it when I was introduced as your father."
Oh, my goodness.
That's
Yeah.
deep.
That's kind of,
I
But he
did the
was-
same thing.
Accurate.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that to anyone, but it had happened. You know, like that book, Something Happened. But you know, you make the best of it. I couldn't have asked for a better work environment, and given my experience on the Mickey Mouse Club, believe me, I appreciated the fact that this show allowed me to grow. I pretty much played my own age. And it gave me entree into things, especially the cars. I could afford fast cars and fast women, so I enjoyed both. I did. And I had a hell of a good time. And then it was over. And after 3 years of kind of going in the toilet, Mickey Rooney came to my door. I hadn't invited him. Of course, I knew it was Mickey Rooney, for God's sake. And Mick was wearing a Nehru kind of shirt and a big medallion. And he said, "Paul, sit down. This is my living room." Sat me down in my living room. He said, "I want you to get your education, find something else to do, and get out of town." I said, "Mick, why are you telling me this?" He says, "Because your career is over." I said, "How do you know that?" He says, "Because it happened to me." And some of you, I'll remind you of something he said when he won the Emmy for Bill. This was great. He had that Emmy in his hand, and he said, "When I was 19 and 20, I was the biggest star in the world. And when I was 40, he said, you wouldn't give me a job." Because that's what happens. Whatever your skill level is, that doesn't dissipate. Maybe it gets discolored a little bit with drink or drugs or whatever, but the fact is Mickey Rooney was good when he was 15, he was good when he was 55, and he was good when he was 85. But he was such a porcupine. Oh boy. We happened to share a birthday, so I've always stayed close to him up to his death. But it was advice like that that was able to help me make lemonade out of what I thought was a pretty raw deal. Pam mentioned Houseboat, the movie. I didn't feel inferior to Cary Grant or Sophia Loren or anybody on that set. I was doing my job and doing it well. Cary Grant complimented me, stayed my friend till his death. I called him Mr. G. Wonderful man. I thought, even with the Donna Reed show and the movies that came after, that I had been raised and trained to be the next Cary Grant. I really believed that that was my career. Not to be. And when I got back to Connecticut and started writing, a guy came up to me, Yuri Yurovich, who was the editor of Walt, Mickey and Me. And after 10 books, I was feeling, well, first of all, I was in Connecticut. That's a long way from family. Carl Betts was very sick. He was the man who played my father. He was a Carnegie Award winner in his college days. He shared the award with Robert Ludlum, an author of some note. And Donna Reed, of course, Academy Award winner. But I was a long way from California, where my family was. And I asked Yuri if I could do this book on the Mouseketeers, because I was still friends with all the survivors. They were all surviving at that time. And I told him I wanted to be a lighthearted look at, you know, my graduating class, if you will, my high school group. And I came out here to do the interviews in 1975. My youngest had not yet had his first birthday. A second son would be born during the research. And I called it research because it was different than what I expected. I'd had my own disappointments and expectations in the career and had Hollywood turn its back on me, and they did, as bluntly as it can be done. And I saw in this group of Mouseketeers so many reflections of my experience. Annette, of course, had maintained this incredible, exalted place, and Annie deserved it. She was America's sweetheart, no doubt about it. Bobby Burgess was still the best dancer I ever met. Tommy Cole, our friend, still the best boy singer I know, except for Don sitting over there. I never seriously dated any of the Mouseketeers because we were friends. And my experience of being I don't know what else to call it, but a pinup boy, a poster boy, you know, on girls' bedroom walls and stuff with all the fantasies that entails. I was very sympathetic to the actresses in Hollywood. It really was. I know in lighter moments I called them Stollywood harlots. But, look, this is a wicked tough town. Wicked tough. And the females are no less ambitious than the males. And they use everything God gave them and then some. The joke is that a lot of women in Hollywood got their minks the same way minks do. Okay, we're on the same page here. That's the world I grew up in. And when I saw the Mouseketeers, over 40 of them, they were so kind and generous to me to talk. And I knew mostly the truth about their lives, not the Hollywood version, and you know, not the highly sanitized and airbrushed reality that's presented to most people. I knew them. I knew who was gay and who was straight and who had the abortions and who had bad marriages, etc. And she asked all of us to please take her Oscar back to her hometown, Denison, Iowa. And the most prominent family, when they passed away, dedicated their house as a museum, Crawford County Museum. And it's Donna Reed's Oscar.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty cool. She was a heck of a gal. And Carl, college educated, they were more interested in our characters as people than the acting. That was a given. That's what we were paid for. We were all expected to show up and, in my case, you know, play the boy. And Shelley played the girl.
Yeah.
And even the record successes were just part and parcel of the package. It's what you did. And you did it as good as you could. I never missed a day's work. There were no dramas on the set. This is the angriest I ever saw Donna Reed in 8 years. She would stamp her foot, and that was that.
The real Donna Reed.
She was the boss. And when I started feeling my wild oats, she came over to me. I remember this so clearly. Put her arm around my shoulder, and now this is an MGM contract player. Remember who I'm talking to now. Paul, she said, you can get away with anything in Hollywood if you're discreet. She did not want to see pictures in the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
She did not want Hollywood Confidential. Remember that?
Yeah.
So you did your job and got to bed by 10 o'clock. So I could get up at 7. I jumped sort of back and forth because all of this, believe it or not, is connected when it came to interviewing the mice. I called Yuri Yurovich after about 3 months out here, and Carl Betts was very sick. My second son was going to be born. And I said, Yuri, this is not a funny book. I don't have great rollicking fun to share with you. No one shared it with me. This is kind of, as a cultural marker, there's more to this story than the personalities. And Yuri, God bless him, said, so write the book you got. And that's how Walt, Mickey, and Me came into being. I relied heavily on the historical record of Disney what he was trying to accomplish, how the Mouseketeers as a show was really designed to bring people to this new thing called Disneyland. And he had to beg, borrow, and steal. I'm sure some of you are old enough to remember what he went through to make that park happen, including at the end having to borrow a lot of money from Howard Hughes, which is why the Tomorrowland had the TWA rocket, if you recall. Yes.
Wow.
And why in subsequent years, when this park took off,
Monsanto.
well, Monsanto, but just think of the growth of Anaheim. You know, he couldn't afford all the property he wanted because speculators were purchasing up the property all around it, waiting for success, which came. He did a lot of work for the government, did Walt Disney, when he almost lost his studio back in the war years. And he produced over 400,000 minutes of film for the Defense Department. Troops were bivouacked at the Burbank lot, which was under camouflage because, you know, air raids. But to jump ahead a little bit, when he wanted to build a second Disneyland to be called Disney World, it was the biggest secret in the world. And his friends in the Defense Department and the federal government turned him on to 40,000 acres in Central Florida, which was land owned by Chiang Kai-shek. And that's how Disney got the land. Now I say that, I'm not dropping a dime on Mr. Disney, but the connections that he was able to engineer and weave into his corporation was so far ahead of its time, we didn't even have a name for it until corporations began to consolidate. Do you remember all the companies suddenly merging and finding common interests? But Disney did that, and every part in his empire fed the machine. Richard Schickel in his book called it the Disney version, and it is a vast machine. When my book finally came out, I was put on the blacklist, the Disney blacklist. Not because I told nasty stories about people I didn't. I told what was on the public record and had rarely been compiled into one novel. And while that didn't bother me, frankly, I was disappointed because the book was well reviewed, was selling quite well, and then mysteriously disappeared from bookshelves. And it was explained to me in later years that one of the components of the Disney empire is a thing called golden books. Remember the golden books? The
Yeah,
Disney
yeah.
printer.
Yeah.
The kids' market is 30% of all books sold. 30%. And in my era, late 70s, there's only so much shelf space. Only so much. And if the distributor of golden books and the Disney books needs a little more space, something's got to give. And Richard Schickel and I were the people who had to give. That did bother me.
But yours wasn't a children's book. Yours wasn't even close to a golden book. Yours was for adults.
When you piss off Disney, they remember.
No.
There was a guy there named Card Walker. Now let me jump ahead because this is important. The first movie I did after the Donna Reed show was a Disney picture, his last, called The Happiest Millionaire. And you didn't get hired at Disney unless Walt Disney hired you. He signed off on everybody. And I showed up at work for rehearsals. This is a musical, big, it was supposed to be the next, what was that one? Jim Jiminy?
Oh,
Mary
Poppins.
Poppins.
Yeah.
Well, I showed up on my motorcycle. And motorcycles aren't allowed on the Disney lot.
Oh.
So the guard had to call Mr. Disney. And I was given approval. And anyway, I drove to the back of the lot. And a little while later, Walt came ambling down. He said, "Oh, Petersen, you're still getting in trouble." We had long since buried the hatchet. He was a fine man. I admired him. And I admired him more having written the book to see what he constructed. It was all in his mind. Did he have wonderful animators and story editors and all? Yeah, sure. Except it was Walt.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And some years after this blacklist was turned over to the new chairman of the board at Disney Corp, this was put on his desk by the head of security for Disney, and he read the names and he said, "What is this?" And the guy said, "Well, that's the Disney blacklist. You don't hire those people." And he looked at this guy and said, "That ends today." And I got a call that afternoon. Tickets to Disneyland for the first time ever, free. I had 2 young sons. I couldn't afford to take them. It was great.
Back when it was $5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, books, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's what really changed, because the regime had changed. Now, as for its impact on the kids, and I wrote about this as gently as I could, Disney brand is a heavy weight to carry. Annette did it gracefully. She did. And even in the midst, if you remember the last paragraph of the book, even Annette had her troubles with Mr. Disney. There is in law, and I'll talk a little bit about child labor law, a constitutionally protected right of disaffirmance. And what that means is if you're a minor and the people in charge of your life sign a contract on your behalf which turns out to be unfair or exploitive, the day you become in law an adult, you can disaffirm. I'll tell you why that's important, especially in this month. The 8 children on John and Kate Plus 8 worked for 6 years on the #1 cable show on television. John and Kate got paid, producers got paid, directors got paid, the crew got paid. The 8 children were not paid.
Really?
They were not paid.
Wow.
They are the property of their parents.
So the parents got paid for them?
And because the assumption is, hey, it's their parents, they're not going to steal their kids' money. Dream.
Yeah.
Well, those older girls, the twins, turn 18 this month.
Right.
Let me tell you what's at stake. Here's a private heads up. The Discovery Channel, which produced John and Kate Plus 8, profited, this is in their own corporate minutes, $200 million on that one show.
Wow.
I say again, none of the children were paid.
Aw.
What do you think that disaffirmance is going to be worth?
A lot.
You
Well,
bet
are
a
they,
lot.
were the parents obligated to set up any kind of
None
trust?
whatsoever,
Nothing.
because
Yeah.
the Coogan Law only exists in California as the Coogan Law. We had to amend that in the year 2000, and we did. So now the person who, here is a unique American concept, at least in California and a few other states. The person who does the work owns the money. Parents, in California at least, are trustees, and they must have a Coogan account and act as responsible trustees. That's us. That's former kid stars working together. Because who's going to tell us we didn't know what we're talking about?
So what will happen when these twins turn 18?
They will sue the living daylights out of the Discovery Communications channel, and they will win hands down.
What about the
Duggars?
parents?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
Duggars?
What about them?
Yeah, same.
Think of all the children being worked, bedroom cameras, cameras in the bathroom, their every moment exploited, and they don't get paid? What a terrible, rotten thing to do.
It is.
Because it will affect them. Even the Dion quintuplets, if you remember them from Canada, you'll remember them. They
lived down the street from me.
came to bat.
Wow.
And I'm still very close with John Goslin, with even with all the troubles. I said, you just tell those girls, we'll get them their day in court. And
Is
we
he,
got
now
some,
how is he doing? Cause he.
John is okay, he is an okay fellow. He
Is
was in deep because Kate bought into the whole fame and it's just awful.
Yeah.
And her,
But did the parents get paid
certainly they
for
were paid.
for the children, like an extra amount for each
Oh, it
child,
was a
or?
package deal.
Okay.
But the parents got the check, do you see?
Yeah.
And there was no
the-
Coogan law.
Hmm?
And there was no Coogan law.
Of course not in Pennsylvania, although they did have child labor laws which were never enforced. You'll love this. This is the #1 show on cable television, and the Department of Labor and Industry in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania never came to the set.
Oh,
Wow.
Never once did they come to see if the children were being educated, if their welfare was being well taken care of. They didn't see the cameras in the bathroom and in the girls' bedrooms.
Aw.
They read the tabloids. They certainly read the tabloids with the troubles that John and Kate went through in the subsequent divorce. But they never took the time to go visit. Now, California can be a lot of things, but I'll tell you, we've been doing this with kids in the industry since 1922 with laws on the book. And you hurt a child on the set, you are in big trouble because of the Studio Teachers Union, who guard the health, safety, and morals of the minor. That's their charge in law. They, in my day, because Dr. Stone in the Donna Reed show was a pediatrician, we had a lot of babies, infants. Infants are limited to a 2-hour day. No more than 20 minutes under what were then very hot lights. And the studio teachers and a nurse had to be in attendance, and the teacher would stand there with a stopwatch, and in my case, on the Donna Reed show, Dr. Barkley had a whistle. And all of a sudden, in the middle of anything, she would say, "Baby's done,"
Oh my gosh.
and you couldn't cross her.
Well, she just
'Cause she
ruined,
would shut
she
you down.
ruined the shot too.
She
She would have ruined the shot.
Well,
Baby's done.
Take her out of
Yeah.
heaven.
Cut.
But that's why Hollywood uses twins and triplets and quadruplets, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Now, the problem with that, if you want a newborn, is that you need a lot of newborns to put in a full day's work. So every multiple birth baby in county facilities, before they leave that hospital, are given business cards of baby agents of Iowa. There is no greater political divide in the United States Senate than those two men. But they're friends and they work together, and on these baby bills, they've been very good. We have a very simple, straightforward ask. We have an elevator speech. We can get it done in 30 seconds. We want the same rules for children as you have for animals. And at the end of every movie, no animal was killed or injured in the making of this film.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And the AHA, American Humane Association, supports our effort because their founding back in the late 1880s was as a child welfare league in Broadway theater.
Oh.
They got their start taking care of children in the entertainment business. The only reason they dropped away from that is Joachim Knut, famous stuntman who helped found the Humane Society as you now know it, was the head wrangler on charge of the Light Brigade where 40 horses were killed in one shot.
Oh my gosh.
And guess what? There's more money in animal protection than in children. So we say to them, here's the book, 90-odd pages of AHA regulations, which are global, and if they're violated, your production can be labeled hot goods, ineligible for exhibition in the United States.
Wow.
A lot of power.
So even if it's like filmed in England or something like that?
Well,
it's-
many places are very difficult, but England has a much stronger tradition because of theater.
Right.
You know, you're talking a 400-year theatrical tradition where girls were not even allowed. It was young boys playing the girls, Shakespeare days.
Right.
They expect excellence. They demand excellence of their young performers. So they're pretty protective. Nonetheless, in common law, English common law, children are the property of their parents. Understand what that means. means to a parent, you are like a car or a cow. Let me tell you the law we had to change. This is a direct quote. The parents of a working child are entitled to its custody, income, and services. Pretty good definition of slavery. That was the law. Now, as I told you, the parents have to act as trustees. Every child who works gets a Coogan account. And the reason that's important because the old Coogan law didn't address the remainder of the money after Coogan money was set aside. It left open the ownership issue. Even if a court, as in my case, set aside 20% of my gross income till my 21st birthday, the remaining 80% belonged to my mom and dad. Lock, stock, and barrel. I was lucky. Nobody beat me up. Nobody stole my money. Pam will remember when my dad was not swift with numbers. Johnny Crawford said it great. He said, my dad's investment philosophy was buy high, sell low. And when I had my first IRS audit, I was 14. And my dad took me over. It used to be above the old Hollywood post office, the IRS offices. And he brought in my records in a shoebox. And the young black man looked at me with pity in his eyes and said to my father, don't you think, Mr. Petersen, it's time you took his business seriously? From that following Thursday, I picked up my check every Thursday, and Grandpa helped me open a bank account at Bank of America Kitty Corner, and I deposited it, and I wrote my checks. I had to be taught a lot of things, but I took it seriously.
At what age?
I was 14 then. A lot of my friends, Musketeers, other kids on other series, weren't so lucky. The tragedies that I have witnessed, especially in the growth of a minor consideration, would break your heart. Prominent kids reduced to pennilessness, and all the subsequent problems, drugs and alcohol. The reason Walt, Mickey, and Me was so important to me is it had opened this commonality of experience, no matter what our circumstances had been, of other professional kids who had done the lessons, who had, you'll remember these days, we had Capizio dance shoes. After practice, sometimes I'd take my Capizios off. There was blood in them.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
The kids worked so hard.
yeah.
And my mom never really understood. We were sitting in a Stater's Brothers market when someone, this is years after the show, a person came up to me and asked for my autograph, which I was happy to give them. And I said to my mom, that's the difference, Mom. You didn't have to do the work. Big cheerleader in the stand, forget it. It was my job. Whenever I hear a stage parent said, well, I ask them, what'd you do last summer, hoping to hear that the kid went to summer camp. Well, we did a movie last year. We? What's the we part?
yeah.
Mom didn't do those scenes with Cary Grant or Sophia Loren. She was there. Not always a welcome guest. There is a reason there is the stereotypical stage parent. There is. Some people make a business out of it. Their kids are their business. The modern iteration, I mentioned this to you down at dinner tonight. A Florida family, mom and dad have their 10 and 11-year-old daughters in bra and panties, prancing around in provocative fashion in their bedrooms, and it's all broadcast on the internet.
Oh my gosh.
And it's about $4,500 a month that mom and dad make out of exploiting their children.
That's
And
terrible.
when I took this to the feds to say, do something, they look you right in the eye and say, there are no rules preventing this. There are no laws
For what?
making that illegal.
That's not kiddie porn, in a
No,
sense?
it has to be an overt act. Remember, we're all living into this regimen. Describe what is pornographic, what's obscene.
That's true.
It's like the judge said,
Changed.
I'll know it when I see it. There's always a way. What are all these provocative poses with children? I talked at length with Shirley Temple on this and Richard Schickel. I'll remind you that even in Shirley Temple's day, At the end of her movies, how did it end up with those scanty little dresses she was wearing?
Yeah.
The little girl was sitting on the grown man's lap, having made his troubles go away. This has been around a long time. The casual exploitation, sexual and otherwise, of children is everywhere in our culture. Push-up bras for 9-year-olds.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Tell
Am I going on too long here?
Yeah. Tell them how much Shirley Temple made at the end of her career
Oh.
and what she was given for
You'll love
all
this.
that work.
This is in her book. This is Shirley's own book, so I'm not telling tales out of school. This is not some industry secret. After she divorced John Agar, who was her first husband, a cowboy, a very handsome cowboy star, her fiance, Mr. Black, would not marry her until he sat down with Shirley's parents. And the Black family, Mr. Black, was a principal at a big Beverly Hills bank. They lived in a 12-room mansion in Beverly Hills. And Mr. Black pressed Shirley's father, how much money does Shirley have? What are we starting with here? I have my own, but what does Shirley have? And after much hemming and hawing, Shirley Temple's father said, Shirley has $40,000 in the bank, and she has the deed to the dollhouse out here in the backyard, which the MGM employees built for her. This is a girl who helped America get through the Depression. The Shirley Temple dolls sold over $50 million. Forget the money she made at the studio. $40,000 and the deed to a dollhouse. I got mad on her behalf, but she wouldn't let me. She was not bitter. She helped her family through the Depression. She had other interests, and thank God Ronald Reagan gave her a chance to exercise those ambitions as a competent ambassador. But she would never sign a copy of the DVDs. She didn't like people writing about this without understanding the whole scope of the problem. Before Shirley Temple, there was a gal named Diana Sarah Carey, a gifted writer, by the way, 4 of the best books on Hollywood you will ever read. Hollywood's Children, Hollywood's Cowboys, and the seminal biography of Jackie Coogan, her contemporary. She, like Jackie Coogan, made $4 million back in the 20s when she was little. Her parents took it all too. Fortunately, she's a very smart girl. And after getting her education, wrote these wonderful books I've told you about. If you ever get a chance, pick them up. I'm proud mostly that she is our oldest active member of 900 former Kid Stars. She's the queen for sure. Dowager queen. Yes.
Can I ask, you talked about your high school years and you also talked about education for
not much.
children, but who was there to kind of guide your morality? Was there a morality? I know parents.
Pam's laughing.
Yeah,
Pam's like, what morality?
But it sounds like that you were there at the studio a lot.
Well, of course I was.
And so you were educated.
The role of parentage.
In my case, you got to understand how lucky I was. First and foremost, there was Donna Reed and Carl Betts. These are college-educated, strong-willed, solidly grounded people who were not going to allow anything to harm Shelley Fabre or me, and then later my little sister. And the reason they made that commitment, and this is tough to do for people in the midst of their careers in their 30s, there had been the Father Knows Best experience on an adjacent stage. We were on stage 1, Father Knows Best for 7 years, was on stage 7.
What happened there?
Well, let's start with this. Robert Young was an active alcoholic throughout.
Really?
Billy Gray was 10 years older than the party was playing and was in trouble every weekend. Lauren Chapin's mother was Robert Young's favorite drinking companion. And Eleanor Donahue, the older daughter, was having an affair with the producer, Harry Ackerman. They subsequently married happily. That was the reality. And that was not going to happen on the Donna Reed show. Thank God she was the boss. So the head of Columbia Pictures Education was a woman named Dr. Lillian Barclay, direct descendant of Abe Lincoln, that clan.
Say it again.
And she had 3 master's degrees. And she put off retirement to stick with me in Shelley. And she was my teacher for 8 straight years. My high school experience was unique. I went to University High 2 days, once to register and once to graduate.
Oh my God.
The people at University High never call me for reunions or anything. They have disavowed my participation. Fine.
Did you do exams?
Certainly,
Oh,
you
okay.
bet. I was heavily tutored, and I had to perform. Nothing but the best was expected of me. I was urged to contribute to the writing of the scripts, how to tell a story. My conversation was with adults every day for 8 years. And these were people who helped invent show business. I'm telling you, they invented show business. Our senior lighting guy was a guy named George Hager. He was in his 80s when we started. He worked with D.W. Griffith. Carl's best buddy was Robert Ludlum and Patty Chayefsky and the guy who played Archie Bunker.
Carol
Carolyn
O'Connor.
O'Connor, thank you. Donna Reed's friends were Dina Martin, were Frank Sinatra's wife. Her husband, Tony, traveled with the biggest players in the business. I'm talking Lou Wasserman, Mike Frankovich, movie moguls. Hell, I even got to know Harry Cohen when I was a kid because I was doing work at Columbia. I loved the guy. He was fun to be with. He scared everybody else. But as a kid, what did I know? He was just a guy who smelled like a big cigar, who for fun would hand me a fishing rod.
So you didn't have any interactions with children your own age?
I had a life, and I'm a pretty gregarious person. I'm still friends with my grade school chums.
Okay.
I'm still friends with all the Musketeers. I'm friends with all my car buddies. I have a certain reputation within the industry that I'm proud of. There are people at Screen Actors Guild and after who had no idea that I was an alcoholic because I'd never been drunk in front of them. They didn't see that really bad part. And at least for me, the people who mattered were industry leaders that you never see. I was the guy when there was a questionable project coming off the drawing boards, if you will, by these socially challenged writers in their little garrets deciding to write about 9-year-olds getting laid.
Oh my God.
I was the guy who would walk up to them and said, if you were in any other business and you solicited a sex act from a 9-year-old, you'd be in jail. How dare you think, under the cover of artistry, that it's okay to do that
Yeah.
and show it to my kids? How dare you? But that's the industry. That's how far removed from reality they are. In the boardroom at Screen Actors Guild and after, there are 160 combined board members. Now they're merged. There were exactly 3 conservatives in the room. Bruce Boxleitner, a woman named Rebecca Bush, and me. That was it. Everybody else is in that West Coast, East Coast bubble. We're all idiots to them. Yes?
Listening to you, I'm thinking a lot of that mentoring by people, you know, the adults in your
Yes.
life and their long time in the industry. And that kind of mentoring, do you feel like that gave you a lot of this boldness
Oh,
and steadfastness?
you bet. Well, it's in my nature, too. Our mother was a crusader. She was, look, the first bill, the preemie bill I told you about, when the governor signed the bill, we were in Sacramento. And they knew the story, of course it was well covered by the press, but the governor turned to me and said, gee, Jeff, you must be very excited. Now, Jeff Stone was the character I played.
Oh.
I don't care what he called me,
As long as you get the job
as
done.
long as the job is done.
Yeah.
And it was repeated in Pennsylvania when we got them to update their laws. And in New Jersey, and in Louisiana, and in New Mexico, and in Kansas.
So you're pretty
interestingly.
single-minded
Well, yes.
and passionate.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
certainly,
Yes.
well, I have always, I have been in a position, given what I agitate for, that I've been there. And all people have to do is turn on a television channel at 5:30 in the morning, and there I am, you know, age 12 to 20.
Now?
And even now, yes.
Oh, I never
on-
got to watch that
it's on
show. I guess I
MeTV,
should.
so-
Do you get royalties?
No,
Why not?
because the contract was the 1955 contract. We call it the Reagan contract, which guarantees you residuals through 6 airings of the show. And that's it.
Wow.
Now, we've improved it. The kids who are working now get residuals into perpetuity. But let me tell you an interesting tale. You won't believe this. Fred Savage from the Wonder Years. Fred Savage, wonderful family, Stanford grad, did everything right. His show was in syndication. He was getting big bucks on the show in syndication. And one day his mother, who was on our committee, the Young Performers Committee, came in. There was steam coming out of her ears. Why? Because Fred no longer qualified for insurance on the Screen Actors Guild Health and Welfare. And the reason is SAG has a cap. If you make, in Fred's day, more than $30,000 per episode, the producers no longer have to kick in 10% to pension and welfare. Famous, steady man, a worker, lost his insurance. Because this crap that Hollywood's been selling you guys for oh so long is sick. Because the guys at the top, they aren't paying their fair share. They're not paying 10% of their $40 million a picture. They're paying 10% of the first 400,000, and that's it.
Oh my gosh.
It takes a person of extraordinary character like Johnny Carson to insist that NBC, with his very lucrative contract, pay their percentage to pension and health. He single-handedly saved our clients. So I don't take kindly to that, because I see how it hurts. I'm the guy who takes kids whose careers are long over, who don't qualify for pension benefits, or didn't make enough money, didn't get over the cap because of the no residuals to pay for their health care coverage. I tell people this. I was good friends with all of our gang kids. And it was heartbreaking to know that Hal Roach, King World, having made $100 million, all he had to pay those kids is $5,000 a year, and they would have kept their health insurance and pension credits. That's all he had to pay them. Wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. I get pissed on things like that.
Yeah,
And
it's
yet,
just like-
Spanky McFarland would say to me, Paul, the smiles made it all worthwhile. Easy for you to say, you got the smile, but I'm angry about that.
Doesn't put food on the table.
That's, you know, you're selling appliances at Sears in Dallas. Sorry. I get hot about things like that. It's wrong. It's
Yeah,
wrong.
it's wrong.
And to do it to a child, I always had the advantage when people like Nick Counter and the current iteration over there at AMPTP, they try to justify exploiting children. They know who the bad parents are. Different strokes. They knew there was trouble there. They worked them anyway. Gary Coleman had no kidneys. Had a gallon of saline solution in his stomach and threw up before every take.
Aw.
And they worked him every day for 7 straight years. His only revenge and the reason he won his lawsuit was he outlived them. The doctors told his parents he'll be dead by the time he's 17. He was sick when they adopted him. And as he told me, Paul, they couldn't give me back.
But his parents took all his money, right?
Yes, they did, but he got even because they
I remember.
had
something.
constructed a business format. I won't go into it, it's very complicated, but suffice to say that when he collapsed the pension fund that he had for the 3 employees of Zephyr Production, his production company, there were 3 payouts. His dad got $300,000, his mom got $300,000, and Gary got $200,000. And when the rank unfairness of this contract, in which the manager got paid, the agents got paid, and Gary was working for scale, so the production company was saying what Jackie Coogan's mother said in the 30s. But there was this thing called business insurance, a policy that Gary Coleman paid for himself. And that's where he got the $4.3 million settlement from his own insurance.
Wow.
Oh, I get so crazy about this stuff. Because look, it's wrong. It's wrong for a production company to hop a jurisdiction and be able to work kids 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's happening in America. Iowa, Illinois, production centers, places where kids work routinely.
CPS never gets involved.
I know,
Who?
that's
Child Protective
Child Protective
Services.
Services.
Are you with famous kids who have the job of a lifetime that people are envious of and jealous of?
They barely get,
They don't
they barely
care.
do anything for.
And if
I
any of
know,
you,
I know
if any
that
of you were teachers, you know that if a kid is absent more than 10 days, they can be failed at their grade level and declared truants, and their work permits denied. Have you ever heard of that happening in California?
No.
No, what a surprise. Where do you think the power is? When I'm telling you that I was lucky to have Donna Reed, it's like Melissa Gilbert was lucky to have Michael Landon. If you're in with the good people,
Yeah.
it's the best experience you can imagine. I mean, what is wrong with being rich and famous? Nothing, I'm telling you. A lot of fun.
Even as a little kid?
Even as a little kid. The problem is, it's like having a really nice dinner. Somebody brings over the bill. And you better be prepared to pay that. In the case of the Mouseketeers, talented, each and every one with distinct talents, attractive, all white kids, with the exception of Miss Goff, the first Latina ever child in a starring role. The business wasn't kind to them. It was kind to Bobby Burgess. Like he said to me, Paul, he said, where else can a dancer find a steady job like I did it with Lawrence Welk? Can you imagine a 25-year career, profit sharing with Lawrence Welk? Sharon Baird, who was only about yay big, was a wonderful gal, who happened to make friendships with Sid and Marty Krofft. And she was perfect inside the costumes. And famous for it. Her work is exceptional across every platform. Oh,
Puff and stuff.
Puff and stuff, that's right. But then you have people, a young girl who was on a soap opera for 5 years before she erupted into soap opera stardom and she got married. Luke and Laura, you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Luke and Laura.
Just before that happened, she said to her dad, they were living out in West Hills in San Fernando Valley, you know, Dad, I'm really missing my friends, my high school friends. They were in that neighborhood. What do you think if I quit the show and go back to school? And he said, well, honey, you can leave the show, but we'll lose the house. It's not a unique experience. Let me tell you how many kids became adults with nothing.
Would
Well-
you say it's getting better or worse in Hollywood?
If Hollywood was the center of the universe, I would tell you they're getting better. But 50% of all production is outside of Hollywood now. And more than 60% of total gross revenues come from offshore. And the same elements that lead supposedly mature and kindly adults to exploit children exist all over the world. Bollywood, Japan.
And parenting across,
Parents
it's
haven't
become a
changed.
lost art.
Yeah,
Parents don't
parents
care.
haven't changed.
No.
Yeah.
When you see a good one, it's a miracle. Yes.
So do you think that parents are doing their children a disservice? And I ask you that for a reason, because my son was born with spina bifida,
Mhm.
paralyzed from the waist down, and he always wanted to be an actor. And for a while, I did take him to this little Rainbow Theater in Vegas.
Good.
But I stopped taking him because I was convinced that he was just going to get heartache. I mean, I saw no future for my kid. Well, am I wrong? Did I save him from heartache?
Partially. Your heart's in the right place. A talented child who has that gift to entertain others, it's a rare gift. You can identify it early, and I don't care the physical condition. The Young Performers Committee created the Media Access Office. That's why you see blind people and deaf people and Down syndrome people and amputees on TV. We created that for children. Because you get so much back when you entertain people, confidence level. There's no accident the kids who are good in music and dance and theater excel in English and science and math.
Well, when we were kids, handicapped children were really hidden from us. We didn't get to see
Absolutely.
the iron lungs. I never saw too many
We
handicapped
had a cousin, Karen, in Iowa, who was hidden away in the attic.
Literally.
Cerebral, literally. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We did not talk about her.
Oh, my goodness.
That's Iowa,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
1950.
And was she Down syndrome or?
No, she has cerebral palsy.
Oh.
That's changed, and that's a good thing. Our kids have a chance, and when I say our kids, I'm pretty inclusive. Believe me, I'm pretty inclusive. I have seen wondrous transformations in a child who's given a chance. We're very supportive of this because, you know, I tell people over and over, close your eyes for a minute and just remember 3rd grade. What it felt like if someone made fun of your nose, or you're taller than all the rest of us, how peculiar you could feel. And it lasts you forever.
When he was a teenager in the 1980s, he used to do that Rocky Horror
Oh, sure,
midnight showing, and he had a
absolutely.
ball as
In
Dr.
costume
Scott.
and all the rest.
And so, you know, I would go sometimes and watch him, and I would think, was I so wrong to discourage the
I
child?
want to add, if they want it.
Right.
It's different if you want it for them. 'Cause
That's true.
our mother wanted it for us.
Boy, did she ever.
If he wants it, go for it.
Well, he wanted it, and I didn't, so I felt guilty all these
But
years.
Don't feel
people have
guilty.
these
Don't feel
dilemmas
guilty.
with Little League.
Oh,
Yeah.
With
wow.
the
That's
landscape.
true.
No,
And
Yeah.
they're,
that's a whole different,
it's so different. I tell people all the time, you want to see what a stage parent's like, go to a high school football
Oh,
game.
yeah, or baseball,
Or
soccer.
And just
soccer.
watch the
And
people
they're
in
running
the
down
stands.
Yes.
That's what it's
Oh,
like.
I've caught myself doing
But-
it.
The
Yeah.
social interaction with kids.
We're gonna red card.
Yes.
That you lost that.
Well, I had a different kind of interaction. Remember,
Correct.
there were a lot of us working on television, and we got together a lot. I insisted on it. Pam will tell you, I had a bowling league, I raced cars. I made every effort to stay in contact with my friends. I would, I mean, at the time, I would have to pick up the check sometimes, don't get me wrong. But, like Lee Aker, who was Corporal Rusty on Rin Tin Tin, was my life friend. And when he was down on his luck, we were there to help him. And that's what a minor consideration became. After writing this book, my eyes were opened. Friends of mine were committing suicide. And I started a minor consideration along with my wife, who's a show business nurse. And at first, I had no idea what we were going to do, honest to God. They announced Rusty Hamer's death. He was the kid on Danny Thomas's show. And I sat bolt upright in bed on a Sunday morning, January 19th, 1990, and said to my wife, that'll never happen again. If there's a kid actor in trouble, I'm going to show up. And that's what we do.
What did he die of? What
Gunshot
happened?
to the brain.
He killed himself?
Yeah, he certainly did.
A lot of them,
A lot
see in
do.
the press that
A
they
lot do.
suicide.
And as I had to remind my sister, and I feel this keenly, I know more brothers and sisters of famous kid stars who have killed themselves than kid stars who have killed themselves.
Really?
This is a rough go. This is not,
Is there
This is
any
not
kind
for
of
sissies.
mentoring?
That's what we do.
Or people that are there?
That's us.
Because
That's
I was
him.
just, I know, you and I were talking earlier today, and how when you didn't get the part, I said, well, didn't your mom say, it's all right, honey, because there's something else for you? You know?
Toughen
and-
up, girl.
Yeah,
Toughen
and I'm
up.
just thinking if there are people
Wow.
in the industry that they're on the set, like the tutors, and they're, to keep
Look
it,
how difficult
because
this is.
encouragement.
You gotta have the right circumstances.
Yeah.
The crew is far too busy.
Well,
You're there,
certainly.
you're a product with them. And frankly, you come and go. You come and go.
Yeah.
And for a studio teacher, just like the rest of humanity, 1/3 are good, 1/3 are average, and
Well.
1/3 are bad.
You're gonna get that
That's
everywhere.
reality,
Yeah.
It's reality.
Well, I was thinking about the Partridge Family.
Yes,
None of those kids did well, really.
As a golf.
troubles everywhere. If you get a bad collection of kids, it's horrible. If you have Little House on the Prairie and Michael Landon is your champion, you do okay. How would you, consider the difference. The 3 children who worked with Donna Reed and the 3 children who had to work with Roseanne Barr.
Oh, good Lord.
Well,
Yeah.
apples and oranges, you know?
Do you think?
Yeah.
Or how about the kid had the misfortune of being cast in a long-running series with Charlie Sheen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
He wouldn't be allowed in a classroom in LAUSD, Charlie.
No.
He didn't deserve to be there. He was a drunk, and a bad one. And yet there was the kid. We had a girl, Grace Under Fire. I'm going to forget her name.
She was,
She was out of control.
But working with
Out of
that lady.
control.
was she?
And the middle kid came to us for guidance and support, and the mom pulled him from the show, walked away from the contract. And the producers tried to come down hard on her, saying, we're going to sue you for every penny. And we got him a real good attorney, and guess who had to pay? The producers.
For the condition.
For the misbehavior of the star of that show.
Yes, she was.
Oh.
She was
All
a
on
star.
tape.
Who was the
That
star?
blonde lady that was a.
I can't think of her name right now. In any case, the kids, if you can get to court, if you can get on Oprah, you can make your case. Because it's indefensible. You can't have people behave that way around children. You can't.
Well, that kid in Charlie Sheen.
Yes, Angus is his
Didn't
name.
he, like, say, I'm done?
Yeah, after the show went off the air,
right.
nobody
I mean, he
gives up a
wouldn't-
good job.
He wouldn't do the re-up.
Oh, why should he? He was getting paid $300,000 an episode. And he stuck it out, went to the bitter end. Fortunately, Charlie's co-star, I forget his name right now, was a wonderful mentor to him.
John
He's a
Fryer.
good
Oh,
dad.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Because, and he needed it, thank God he had it.
'Cause
You'd be astonished how, no you wouldn't, we all had one good person in your life
yeah.
can make all the difference.
Yeah.
One good man, one good woman.
Right.
That-
Teacher.
Yes,
So, what was the problem with the 2 Corys, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim?
they're bad families, they're just plain and simple.
Is it it comes down to the family?
It always does. You know,
Because
children-
they're big stars. With the movies they made as kids. Then
Not
they
a
got
star
off track and got a
You're
little
not a
bit
star
wild.
when you're a kid.
But when they come
Nobody
out,
thinks you're responsible as a kid. They don't give you the credit. You don't even get the big bucks.
but now as an adult, Corey Feldman is naming names and calling out the adults
Yes?
who took advantage of them. But it doesn't seem like anyone is listening.
Nobody is listening. They all think he's
Corey
nuts.
Feldman.
No, they
Corey
think
Feldman
you
and
had
Corey
your
Haim.
chance.
Corey
Shut up.
Feldman was
that's
in.
true.
That's what they think.
Yeah.
And
Um,
most my experience,
Vampire
even among the
Family kids.
Mouseketeers, if you got a gripe, you keep your
Lost
mouth
Boys.
shut.
He was in Lost Boys.
I'm sad.
And what
And
you're
a
doing,
host of
how
other
many
movies.
people are involved?
900 former kid stars.
Wow.
900.
But I mean,
Yeah.
for like, you and your wife are
We
the
started.
dynamos now, but
Well,
who else do you
actually,
have working with
well,
you?
Jeannie Russell, who played the neighbor girl for Jay North on Dennis the
Oh,
Menace.
yeah.
Tony Dow, very helpful.
Leave it to Beaver.
Wally.
Yes,
Yeah.
Wally Cleaver.
Wally Cleaver. We had, at the beginning, about 9 or 10 people who immediately came to our side. Not big names, it wasn't Ron Howard and folks like that.
The people devoted to the task.
You gotta have the experience, you gotta have worked with people that you cared about
So did
and
Ron
find them
Howard?
dead.
Ron Howard have a good experience with
Yeah,
Andy
best.
Griffith?
Yeah, Andy,
His
yeah.
family.
Andy Griffith.
Let me tell you a great story about Ron Howard. Rance and Jean, his mom and dad, were industry veterans. They never moved from their ancestral home. They never lived on Clint's money or Ron's money. And at the dinner table one night, when high school was over, Ron said to his dad, "You know, I don't think I want to go to college. There's no reason. I love show business." And this is what Rance said to him. "Young man, you have been telling America since you were 3 years old that you were working to go to college. So you will, by God, go to college." That's what it
That's
takes.
parenting.
And all Ron did is
Exactly.
graduate top of his class from USC Communications. And he's brilliant.
Yeah.
He's
Brilliant.
given us the gift of that, not only the vast experience, but the technical skills too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of him. But that's a rarity, believe me,
Yeah.
rarity.
His
You can
family was just
Hmm?
incredibly good. His family was just real.
You bet. They came to our first conference when we were putting together what the unions could do. And Rance and Jean shared that story and others about what it takes. It takes nerves of steel to look at a very high-profile director and say, "No, you won't do that to my kid."
Yeah.
Or
Right.
for a teacher to walk in front of a crew of 100 people say, "The California labor law says he goes home at 4:15. Either get the shot or we're leaving."
Wow.
There are penalties when you stand up to these jerks. Since I started a minor consideration, I've been on 2 interviews after a lifetime.
Wow.
And I never get the job. Allison and I were talking about it yesterday. But if these people who do the hiring and firing have a kid in the business in trouble, guess who they call?
Yeah, you.
So a minor consideration is your organization?
Yes. We're a 501c3, actually a 509a1, because we proselytize for laws and advocate for them and show up.
That's wonderful.
We testify in court, we glad hand the politicians, signing autographs all the time. But look how lucky we are. We have an automatic introduction to people who grew up with us, who happen to have positions of authority. And Walt, Mickey, and Me, this book, was the start. Because I suddenly realized as an author and as a friend to these people that we were not alone. Maybe the rest of the world didn't understand what we went through, didn't know what an abusive stage parent was like, or having your money stolen, or having to work with a foul-mouthed woman would be like. But the other kids understood. The other kids we worked with, that we went to parades together, and bowled together, and dated, and we knew the stories. We knew the stories, the private little clinics up in Beverly Glen, and
You'd live the hell.
well, I'll tell you, in my 30s, I was questioning what was going to end up being the legacy. And I'm pretty sure that Tombstone is going to talk about a minor consideration. It's not going to talk about the Donna Reed show, or the books, however many. Incidentally, I have another one coming out, which is the 60th anniversary of the Donna Reed show. It's like a family album, cute. It comes out in a while, this month, I think. Anyway, I feel blessed that I have had this chance, that I lived this long. I had no idea. But people have been very responsive. When we started a minor consideration, it was as if, well, first I'm going to tell you, when I heard about Rusty's death, I really felt a tap on my shoulder. I'm telling you. And I felt that. And I still feel it. And from that day, there were a lot of kids in trouble, public trouble. Todd Bridges was in jail on attempted murder. Dana Plato was naked in Playboy. Jay North was threatening to kill people. Danny Bonaducci had got in his troubles,
He was a mess.
He was an alcoholic.
Yes,
well,
really.
and many
And
other
worse.
things.
Yeah.
They were all in the news. And when I started making calls that day, that Sunday, the first call I made was to Jay North. I said, Jay, Rusty's killed himself down in DeRidder, Louisiana. If you don't let me get you help, that's going to be you. Because he had become embittered and fat, and he liked guns. And he had a hit list, starting with John Landis.
Wow.
He was the director of the Twilight Zones, where the
Oh,
two children were beheaded along with Vic Morrow.
Nice.
And for the first time in a 30-year friendship, Jay said, okay. Well, I looked at Ron and I said, now what? So I had to find psychologists, and Jeannie came in to help. And it was as if God turned the page. And the industry that wouldn't listen, thinking that it was all my problem, started to help. We have created programs that I mentioned to you, media access for our disabled kids, kids of color. We have a standing program at the Actors Fund called Looking Ahead, which takes kids in the business and gives them skills and leadership training. They're very active, and the industry pays for it, by God, and they should.
Yeah.
Are you paid or are you a
No.
volunteer
We have no
organization?
staff.
It's all
We have, no
volunteer.
one gets paid. Ron and I pretty much did this out of our pocket till some donations come in, but we don't do it to get paid.
No.
I hate Hollywood
It's a higher
charities.
calling.
Well,
really is.
It is, and all of my people of faith understand this. You do it because you must. You
Yeah.
know, this isn't about a paycheck.
Yeah.
When I looked at those gals confronting Senator Blake in the elevator, realizing that the one who shouted the loudest was making $170,000 a year salary for her quote-unquote mission to agitate for women. I mean, that's what Hollywood does. The poison in Hollywood is they ruin even charities. But at the end of the day, I belong to a thing called the Challenge for a Civil Society, which is run out of UCLA, and the 400 best nonprofits in Southern California sit at tables together. And big guys, important people, people who really have made a difference in our lives. And I'm honored to be part of that.
So there's still a lot of people who are good.
There
Out
are
there?
marginally more than the bad ones.
Good.
Trouble is the bad
I
ones
hear
get
that.
all the attention.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
Well, I think we should probably end on that.
Gee, you think?
positive note.
Was that hopeful
Well,
enough?
that was hopeful, very
Got us fired up.
Poor guy.
So
Oh, good.
on behalf of the Plantation Constant Readers,
Yes.
we would like to thank you for the work that you're doing to
thank you.
help
Yes.
child actors today, tomorrow,